Christmas dinner in Ohio looked normal, but I knew better. The table was full. The food was hot. The lights blinked across the room. My children talked over each other, loud and proud as always, filling the space with noise that never included me. I sat at the end, listening, steady, quiet, and unseen. Brandon talked the most. He liked the attention. He liked the sound of his own voice. He bragged about his work, the pressure he carried, and the sacrifices he believed he made for everyone else. Holly smiled and nodded as if he had cured a disease. Eric corrected small details to look smarter. Lauren scrolled on her phone, half present, half gone. I watched them. That had been my role for years. I watched, supported, filled the gaps, carried the weight they never noticed. I stayed steady as Brandon lifted his glass and started another story. He talked about responsibility, about how he handled everything. He never glanced in my direction when he said he carried the load. He laughed loud enough to shake the table. Then his eyes landed on me. I recognized that look. It was the look he used when he wanted to draw a line. He tapped his fork, leaned back and said, "She's dead weight." The room froze. Holly looked at her hands. Eric cleared his throat. Lauren's screen dimmed as she lifted her eyes, unsure if she should react. No one spoke. No one defended me. No one challenged him. Their silence told the truth louder than his words. I placed my fork down. My breathing stayed calm. I had spent 40 years learning how to stay steady when the people I loved caused the deepest cuts. I looked at Brandon for one long second. He waited for anger. He wanted a scene. I refused to give him anything he could use. I pushed my chair back. The sound echoed down the table. I stood. No speech, no argument, no raised voice. I placed my napkin beside my plate and walked toward the hallway. Their eyes followed me, but no one moved. I reached my bedroom and closed the door. I packed with precision. 5 minutes. A coat, my documents, my wallet, my charger. I checked the keys, the house I paid for, the house they took for granted. I placed the keys in my pocket but knew I would not need them again. I stepped out the side door. The cold hit instantly. Snow brushed across the driveway. The porch light glowed like nothing inside had broken. My car waited under it. I opened the door and sat behind the wheel. My hands were steady. I had carried that family long enough. I started the engine. My phone buzzed again and again, but I didn't check any messages. I drove past the houses on our street, past the decorations, past everything that had held me still for decades. I drove toward the airport with only one plan in mind: leave. June had emailed weeks earlier about a small cabin on Douglas Island, a place I had never seen but felt pulled toward. My husband once talked about Alaska, about the quiet there, about the space that made a person honest with themselves. I opened that email again in the airport parking lot. The cabin was rough, old, and isolated. Perfect. I stepped out of the car and pulled my coat tight. The cold wrapped around me, sharp but clean. I walked into the terminal and found the first available flight to Juneau. The clerk looked at me like most people did, unsure whether I needed help or space. I chose space. I moved through security quickly. People rushed past with bags and gifts, busy with holiday plans. I sat at the gate and looked out the window. The runway lights blinked steadily in the dark. I expected fear to show up. It didn't. Instead, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. Brandon called twice, then Holly, then Eric. Lauren sent a short message asking if I was okay. I didn't answer. This wasn't a moment for explanations. This was a moment for action. The boarding call sounded. I stood and picked up my bag. The cold from outside still clung to my clothes, but it felt lighter than the silence I had left behind. I walked down the jet bridge, steady, cold, and sure. Inside the plane, passengers shuffled bags and jackets. The lights dimmed as the doors closed. I leaned back in my seat. My phone buzzed again. I turned it face down. As the plane moved onto the runway, I looked out through the frosted window. Somewhere below, that house sat full of people who believed I would come back because I always had. They didn't understand what had changed. They didn't understand I was done carrying them. The engine roared, the plane lifted. Ohio disappeared under a sheet of clouds. I kept my eyes forward. I wasn't running. I was stepping into the first decision that belonged only to me. The cabin in Alaska waited, the cold waited, the work waited, the new life waited, and I was finally ready to build it. The plane touched down in Juneau with a hard bump, the kind that wakes people up. I stayed still and waited for the aisle to clear. No rush, no confusion. I knew exactly why I was here. I grabbed my carry-on and stepped out into air that cut straight through my coat. It wasn't pleasant, but it was honest. I preferred that to Ohio's fake warmth. Inside the terminal, families clustered around luggage belts. People talked about tours and cruises, noise everywhere, but none of it touched me. I checked my phone. June had answered my earlier message. Douglas Island Ferry. I'll be there. Short, direct, reliable. I walked outside and hailed a cab. The driver unlocked the door with a quick nod. Where to? Douglas Island Ferry. He drove without another word. I watched the water and the low gray sky. Juneau felt like a place that didn't pretend. No decorations, no pressure to perform, just weather, work, and space. I could live with that. We crossed the bridge, and the driver pulled up near the dock. June stood next to a black truck, arms folded, posture strong. She didn't wave, she didn't stare, she just waited. I liked the tone already. I walked over. She unlocked the truck and moved aside. Long trip. It was time. Good. Her approval came in one clear note, not in a smile. She drove us toward the residential roads on the island. Houses sat far apart. Snow piled in small drifts against mailboxes. The trees blocked most of the wind. June watched the road. The cabin isn't luxury, but it's real. You control it, no one else. That's exactly what I want. You'll meet Carmen in a bit. She runs construction around here. Tough, efficient. Don't let her rush you. She won't. The road narrowed, rising toward a wooded slope. June parked at a small turnout. We walk from here. I stepped out. The cold bit harder than before. My boots sank slightly into the snow. June led the way up a short path. The cabin came into view between two trees, leaning porch, aging logs, uneven roofline. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't supposed to be. It was a place to start. June stopped at the steps. This is what I told you about. I moved past her and tested the railing. Solid enough. I pushed the door open. Cold air flowed out. Inside, the space was bare. One table, 2 chairs, a mattress, nothing else. No noise, no judgment, no history. June stood behind me. If it's too much, tell me now. It's not too much. It's exactly right. Footsteps hit the porch. A woman walked in with a binder under her arm and frost in her hair. You Quinn? Yes. I'm Carmen. She set the binder on the table. Let's check what we're dealing with. She examined the beams, outlets, windows, foundation seams. Her movements were sharp and practiced. She tapped a beam. Structure's strong. Roof needs support. Insulation is weak. Wiring outdated. Fixable. June crossed her arms. She learns fast. You won't have to repeat anything. I prefer that, Carmen noted. I'm not here to waste time, I answered. Carmen opened her binder. Materials list, labor schedule, timeline. Weather will slow us down if we wait. I read through the numbers. Clean, direct, no guesswork. The format reminded me of the household budgets I managed for 40 years while everyone pretended it was easy. I knew how to run a system. I just never had the space to prove it. Carmen tapped a page. If you approve this, we start at sunrise tomorrow. I approve. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Respect, not surprise. She handed me a pen. I signed the contract with one clean stroke. My name looked steady on the page. June shifted her weight. Why Alaska? I closed the binder. Because no one here treats me like I'm in the way. June's eyes softened by a fraction. Good. People survive here because they stand up, not because they're carried. Carmen snapped the binder shut. Make a list of what you want changed. I'll look at it tomorrow. I already have one. I opened my notebook. Same one I used for years to run a home no one respected. I turned to a blank page and wrote, "Start from 0. Carmen watched my pen move. "You're serious about this?" "I don't do things halfway." "Then you'll fit here." She moved toward the door. "Crew arrives at 6. June leaned against the wall. "You'll need a place to sleep tonight. Motel's basic but clean. I'll drive." I looked around the cabin one last time. Empty, cold, unfinished. But it belonged to no one's expectations. That alone made it worth rebuilding. I stepped outside. The wind pressed against my coat. Snow shifted across the ground. No pressure, no demands, no voices telling me what I owed. I could breathe here. June locked the truck. Once work starts, it won't stop. Carmen doesn't believe in brakes. I don't either. We drove back down the road. I watched the cabin disappear behind the trees. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking into a role someone assigned me. I was walking into something I chose. At the motel, June parked. "Rest. Tomorrow changes everything. I'm ready." Morning came fast. I woke before the alarm, fully alert, the way I used to wake when the entire household depended on me. Only now, no one expected anything. That was the point. I got dressed, zipped my coat, and stepped out of the motel room. The air hit hard, but it kept me sharp. I walked to the truck June loaned me for the week and drove toward the cabin. The sky was clear. The road was empty. It felt like the world had opened a lane just for me. Carmen's truck was already parked outside the cabin. Her crew unloaded tools, boards, and insulation panels. No wasted movement, no chaos. I appreciated the discipline. Carmen noticed me and lifted her chin. "You're early." "I don't miss morning starts." "Good. Let's review the plan." She handed me a clipboard. Straight lines, clean columns, exact numbers, labor hours, material counts, costs, weather estimates, everything I needed to see. I checked each section carefully. "Sequence is off here," I pointed. "If we reinforce the roof before replacing the wiring, you'll have to open the walls twice." Carmen looked at the page again. "You're right. We'll switch it." A crew member passed behind her with a ladder. Carmen motioned toward him. "Rico, adjust the order. Roof after wiring." He nodded and moved. She looked at me again. "Most people don't catch things like that. I ran a household for 4 decades. People assume that's not management. They're wrong." Carmen gave a short grunt of agreement. "Walk with me." We moved around the cabin. She pointed at weak spots in the foundation line. I checked the spacing on the beams. She showed me the insulation gaps behind the windows. I wrote notes in my notebook. Simple, organized, not emotional. June arrived a few minutes later carrying 2 coffees. She handed one to me. "Construction day 1. You holding up?" "I'm steady." "Good. Carmen works fast. Keep up." "That won't be a problem." June stepped aside while Carmen and I walked the perimeter again. Carmen tested the subfloor near the back corner. "Sound is clean. Surface is uneven, but that's fixable. We can level it in a day." "Put it after wiring and before roof reinforcement." "I'll do that." Her respect grew each time I matched her pace. Inside, the crew started measuring the interior walls. One man checked outlets with a voltage tester. Another measured spacing for insulation rolls. I tracked each step. "You're checking voltage before cutting the panel?" I asked. He nodded once. "Good. Keep the readings in the log. I want them documented." Carmen overheard. "You like documentation. It prevents surprises. We'll get along." June leaned against the doorframe, watching the rhythm form. "You're taking to this fast." "I'm used to coordinating things that break. The difference is that these things actually get fixed." June offered a small smile. "Welcome to Alaska." As the morning moved on, the crew worked in steady lines. Carmen set a pace that never stalled. I matched her step for step. She reviewed the wiring with me, explaining which lines were salvageable and which ones needed replacement. I took notes. I asked direct questions. I didn't pretend to know things I didn't know, and I didn't pretend ignorance to make anyone comfortable. "You want to understand everything?" Carmen asked. "Yes. If this is my future, I need to understand every wire." Then stay close today. We're stripping the old system. We moved to the breaker box. Carmen pointed out corrosion in the lower panel. This is why the lights flicker. It's outdated. Replace the whole unit. That's the plan. I wrote it down. My notes were short, clear lines, no decoration. June brought in a small portable heater for the crew. She looked at me. Once this place is insulated properly, you'll feel the difference. I'm ready for the work. It shows. A gust of wind pushed against the cabin. Carmen looked toward the trees. Forecast mentioned a front coming in later, nothing heavy, but we move fast just in case. We don't fall behind, I responded. No, we don't. Around midday, the crew took a short break. Carmen stood with me near the open wall frame. Most people can't follow technical talk on day one. You can. I've been underestimated for a long time. It makes people forget I can learn fast. You're not a beginner. I know. June joined us. You see why I connected you two? Yes, I answered. You were right. As the break ended, Carmen clapped her gloves together. Back to work. The crew resumed their tasks without hesitation. The pace picked up, boards went up, old wiring came down, insulation measurements tightened. Every part had order, every movement had purpose. I documented all of it in my notebook. Mid-afternoon, Carmen pointed at the supply list. If you're okay with these materials, I'll place the order tonight. Approved, but add 2 extra rolls of insulation. The weather here doesn't forgive. You learn fast, she repeated. I didn't need praise. I only needed accuracy. June stepped beside me and lowered her voice. This place is starting to look different already. So am I. That's the point. Work continued until the light started to fade. Carmen walked over. Good first day. Tomorrow we start early. Wiring first, reinforcement after. I'll be here before the crew arrives. I figured. I closed my notebook. The page was full. Numbers, notes, sequences, corrections. Not a single line wasted. I stepped outside and looked at the cabin. Still rough, still cold. But the shape of something new was forming. Something real. Something I owned. This is only the beginning, June remarked. I know. And I did. The storm warning started early in the morning. The radio mentioned it. Carmen mentioned it. Even the wind felt sharper when I stepped out of the motel. I drove to the cabin with both hands tight on the wheel. Snow pushed across the road in thin lines. Nothing dramatic yet, but enough to tell me we had a narrow window. Carmen's truck was already there. The crew unloaded the last of the wiring equipment. Carmen walked toward me. Storm moves in by evening. We push hard now. I'm ready. We reinforce the west wall first. That's where the wind hits. The cold hit harder than yesterday. No small talk. No hesitation. Carmen moved fast and expected everyone else to keep up. I matched her pace. The crew moved as a single unit, climbing ladders, securing beams, checking voltage on the new wiring. Inside, the air smelled like cold wood and metal. I held the flashlight while Carmen examined a line of wiring near the ceiling. This section is clean. We run the new panel from here. Do it. She nodded once. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Then again. I ignored it. Carmen watched me for a second. If you need to take that... No, I don't. We worked through the morning. The sky dimmed earlier than usual. Snow thickened, hitting the windows in sharp bursts. The crew secured the roof frame and tightened the insulation boards. Carmen kept checking the sky. We're closing in on the line. They need to leave soon. By early afternoon, wind whipped through the trees hard enough to bend branches. Carmen raised her voice. Pack up! Go now! The crew moved fast, tools into the truck, boards covered, ladders folded. They left without dragging their feet. Alaska workers didn't linger. Carmen stayed. I'm giving you 10 minutes to secure what's inside. Then you lock the door and don't step out till morning. I can handle a storm. This one tests people. I've lived through worse. Just not with weather. She studied me for a brief second, then pointed at the supplies. Flashlights, blanket, water, keep them close. I will. She snapped the door shut behind her. The truck engine roared and faded into the wind. The storm hit fully an hour later. The entire cabin shook. Snow slammed against the walls. The wind pushed hard enough to make the windows vibrate. Power wasn't connected yet, so the room stayed dim. I turned on a small battery lantern and placed it on the table. Cold air pressed in from the corners. I checked the seals twice. My phone buzzed again. I finally took it out. Messages stacked in long threads. Brandon, Holly, Eric, missed calls, demands, questions, accusations. Where are you? You can't just disappear. You need to come back. None of them asked if I was safe. Not one. I powered the phone off. The silence that followed felt cleaner. I opened my notebook to a blank page. The lantern cast just enough light. My hand moved steady as I wrote 3 lines. I wasn't dragging them. I was carrying them. I'm done with that. The wind roared harder. Snow slammed the windows like fists. The cabin groaned, but the structure held. Every board Carmen reinforced that morning was doing its job. I listened to the storm move across the island. Loud, sharp, relentless. But I didn't flinch. Hours passed in steady noise. I checked the lantern twice. I checked the seals again. I kept the blanket around my shoulders and waited. Not panicking, not spiraling, just observing every shift of the walls and the wind. Near midnight, the storm reached its peak. The roof creaked. A deep pressure thudded against the west side. I stood near the center of the cabin, bracing my feet and keeping my breathing slow. I trusted the work we did. I trusted the structure. And for the first time in a long time, I trusted myself. The storm eased sometime before dawn. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The moment the wind dropped, the silence felt heavy and solid. Not intimidating. Familiar. I opened the door a few inches. Snow piled high against the porch. Trees bowed under white weight. But the cabin stood straight. Everything held. Carmen's truck arrived as the sun started pushing through the clouds. She stepped out and walked toward me. You got through it. I did. You look steady. I am. She glanced at the cabin. Structure held better than expected. So did I. Carmen pulled her gloves tighter. Weather clears by noon. We're back to work then. I'll be ready. June arrived minutes later with a thermos in her hand. You all right? I'm solid. She handed me the thermos. This storm gets to people. You're still standing. I know. We walked around the cabin. Snow covered everything, but the framework looked strong. Carmen checked each corner. Nothing cracked. You reinforced your place at the right time. I reinforced myself too. She gave a short nod. Approval, not comfort. June looked at me. If you can get through a night like that, you can get through anything. I already knew that, I answered. I turned back toward the cabin. The storm had tried its best. It wasn't enough. I had changed during that night, quietly, firmly, in a way no one from Ohio had ever believed I could. I closed my notebook and slipped it into my coat. If I can face this, I can face them. And I meant every word. I reached the cabin before the crew. Snow from the storm still covered the ground, but the sky was clear. Cold air bit my cheeks, but my steps were steady. The storm hadn't broken me. It sharpened me. I unlocked the door, checked the seals again, and opened my notebook. Today needed order. Today needed control. Carmen's truck turned into the small clearing. Her crew followed behind her. They moved fast, carrying tools, lifting boards, clearing snow from the work area. Carmen approached with a clipboard. Wiring first, reinforcement next, then insulation. That's the sequence, I confirmed. You ready? I'm ahead of schedule. She handed me updated plans. I reviewed the numbers. This panel needs a higher amperage. Replace it now instead of next week. Carmen lifted her eyes. You want the larger panel? It prevents backtracking. Approved. She turned to the crew. Pull the bigger unit. They moved immediately. No delay, no confusion. Carmen looked back at me. Most people avoid this higher cost. It's not cost, it's stability. We stepped inside the cabin. The crew had already removed old wiring from the west wall. Fresh lines hung ready for installation. Carmen pointed at the breaker box. Remove the old unit. The worker unbolted it. I monitored the steps. Document every voltage reading, I reminded him. He nodded. Carmen gave me a short look. Your eye for detail is strong. I'm used to people depending on me. They just never respected it. We walked the perimeter again. I checked insulation gaps with a flashlight. Add a second layer here, I directed. Carmen touched the beam. You want double? Yes. It'll hold better. June arrived mid-morning, carrying sandwiches and a folder under her arm. She placed the food down but focused on the scene. You're running this place, she noted. I'm running my life, I answered. June tapped the folder. Community permits came through. You're clear for the retreat setup. So I took the papers. Everything stamped. Everything official. Good timing. You earned it, she added. Carmen walked over. We're leveling the subfloor now. Show me. We stepped to the back corner. The workers spread leveling compound across the uneven boards. I crouched down, checking the spread pattern. Smooth the left side. It's rising too fast. He adjusted it immediately. Carmen crossed her arms. You catch things fast. I've been ignored long enough. People mistake quiet for weak. You're not weak. I know. The crew moved with a rhythm that felt like progress. Boards lifted, panels cut, tools hit the wood with steady impact. No wasted motion. I checked each step, adjusting, listing, tightening the plan. By noon, insulation covered half the cabin. Carmen stood by the open panel. We're ready to reconnect the system. You want to check it? Yes. I held the voltage meter as she connected the last wire. The reading stabilized. Good, clean line. Carmen nodded. We test every room once walls go up. June handed me a brochure. There's a winter community fair next month. Locals rent spaces for crafts and services. You could show the retreat design. I looked at the brochure. I'm still building. That's the point. People like watching something rise. I'll think about it. Carmen turned to me. Walls next. Pick the layout. I opened my notebook. Kitchen stays small. Living space stays open. 2 guest rooms split evenly. Bathroom in the center for insulation efficiency. Carmen studied my diagram. That's a solid plan. It's practical. That's why it works. The crew raised the first interior wall. I stood beside them, holding the frame steady while they drilled into the base. The sound was loud and direct, solid, clean. The cabin shifted from empty shell to something with shape, something with intention. Carmen gestured toward the wall. This is the turning point. I know. We moved to the entrance area. Carmen marked lines for the future heating system. This part costs more. It's worth it. You're not cutting corners. Never again. June looked around the space. This place is becoming real. So am I answered. Afternoon brought more structure. The roof reinforcement went up. Additional insulation filled the gaps. The crew worked without slowing. Carmen reviewed each section with me. Everything is tracking ahead. Good. Keep the pace. You handle pressure well. I've handled worse. We ended near sunset. Carmen approached with her clipboard again. 70% complete. Once the heating goes in, we shift to interior finishing. I have a list ready. I figured you did. June held the door open for me as I stepped out. You're different from the woman who walked into this town. I'm the same. I just stopped shrinking. We looked at the cabin together. Fresh walls, clean wiring, reinforced frame. It wasn't finished, but it was solid. It held. So did I. Carmen closed the truck door. Tomorrow we start the roof coating and the internal layout. I'll review the blueprints tonight. I know you will. I climbed into the truck June loaned me. I placed my notebook on the seat beside me. The pages were full. Plans, notes, corrections, decisions. Not one line wasted. The cabin behind me glowed faintly from the work lights left inside. Not decorative. Functional. The way I built everything now. June tapped the roof of the truck. You're building more than a place. I know. I turned the key and started the engine. The day behind me wasn't luck or chance. It was work. My call, my future. and I was far from done. The retreat reached 70% completion by the time the writer arrived. The morning was clear, cold, and sharp enough to remind me that delays weren't an option. I stood on the porch reviewing the updated layout when a rental SUV pulled into the clearing. A man stepped out with a camera bag and a heavy coat zipped to his chin. He lifted a hand in a short greeting. "Quinn Avery?" "Yes. I'm covering small retreats across Alaska. June contacted me last month, wanted me to see your place." "Walk with me," I told him. He followed me inside. Carmen had cleared the main room for safety, leaving the center open and the work lights steady. The wiring was done, the insulation was sealed, the heating system waited for final testing. The writer took slow, deliberate steps, scanning everything. Carmen walked in from the back with her gloves tucked under one arm. "This is the structure so far." The writer lifted his camera. "Can I shoot?" "Yes," I answered. "Document everything." Bato. He moved around this cabin, taking wide shots, close shots, and detail shots. He photographed beams, light switches, window seals, and the reinforced roofline. Carmen demonstrated the heating vents. I explained the layout changes and the permit progress. He didn't interrupt. He took notes quickly, almost mechanically. June arrived holding a box of brochures. "These are mock-ups for your opening," she told me. The writer glanced at them. "You have a brand name already?" "Avery Ridge Retreat." He looked around again. "Strong name." He stepped outside to photograph the exterior. Snow reflected clean light against the wood. The tree line framed the cabin without blocking the view. He walked the perimeter slowly, stopping every few meters to shoot. Inside, Carmen approached me. "He's thorough." "That's good." "He's also influential. His reviews reach a lot of people." "I know." The writer came back in and focused on the guest rooms. He ran his hand along the doorframe. "This place feels intentional." "It is. You built this after leaving Ohio?" "I built this because I stopped waiting for people to value me." He wrote that down. After 2 hours of shooting, he asked for an interview. I stood near the front window. He adjusted the camera. "Tell me why you chose Alaska." "For space, for control, for honesty." "What keeps you going?" "Logic, planning, and the fact that no one here tries to shrink me." He noted every word. "What do you want this place to become?" "A quiet landing for people who need one." He paused. "That's rare." "I know." He lowered his camera. "I'll post the review tonight. It'll reach the travel board by morning." "Good. People respond to stories like yours." "They respond when someone stands up," I corrected. He left soon after. Carmen returned to the work area. "You think the review helps?" "It will." June looked at me. "Get ready. Attention changes things fast." "I can handle fast." And that night, I sat in the motel room with my notebook open. I wrote down each task for the next week: wall finishing, heating tests, booking system setup, supply orders. I kept the plan tight. Structure always calmed noise. My phone buzzed, an alert, then another, then a third. I opened the first one. The writer's review had gone live. Avery Ridge Retreat, built by a woman who rebuilt her life. The title alone carried weight. I scrolled through the article. He highlighted the design, the precision, the location, and the leadership. He wrote, "People aren't choosing the place, they're choosing Quinn Avery." Comments stacked under the post. "Powerful story." "I want to stay here." Finally, a retreat built with purpose. Then the booking alerts hit, one after another, 12 in the first minute, 20 more in the next. Dates filled fast: January, February, March. I watched the calendar block itself in real time. June called. "It's blowing up." "I can see that." "You ready for this kind of demand?" "Yes." Carmen texted a short message. "We expand. Call me at 6. I closed the bookings for April. I needed space to finish construction before opening, but the surge didn't stop. Emails poured in, messages from couples, families, women traveling alone. People wanted a place to start over. People wanted a place that felt like mine. Then the next alert came. News outlets picking up the story. A regional board featured the review, a travel group reposted it, a community page highlighted it under New Alaska Destinations. I leaned back in the chair. My breathing stayed steady, but something inside felt different, something clear. They finally saw me. Not the mother they dismissed, not the woman they ignored. They saw the work, they saw the structure, they saw the precision. Another alert hit. I opened it. A message from an Ohio area code. Brandon. "Mom, is this you? We saw something online." Another message came immediately. "Why didn't you tell us you were doing all this?" Followed by, "This makes us look bad." I locked the screen. No response. Not now. Not ever on their timeline. I opened my notebook again and wrote one line. Seen for the right reasons. The next morning I drove back to the cabin. Carmen was already there, pacing in front of the porch with a new clipboard. "You saw the booking numbers?" "Yes. We need 2 more cabins, a trail, and a sign at the road. Draw the plans." "I already started." June parked beside us. "You're a topic in the community forums. People are calling this a rise." "It's work," I corrected. "It's more than that," she replied. "But work is where it begins." I stepped into the cabin. Yesterday's space looked bigger now. Not from the walls, but from direction. Purpose had shape. Momentum had weight. Carmen joined me. "This is the moment things shift." "I know." Booking alerts continued to hit my phone one after another. I didn't flinch. I didn't rush. I didn't fall into excitement. I stayed steady. I stayed Quinn. The retreat wasn't finished, but the rise had begun, and nothing about it depended on Ohio. The first envelope arrived on a Wednesday morning. I found it on the porch railing, half covered in frost. A thick beige packet with a bright red stamp across the front. Urgent. Legal notice. My name printed in bold, my full name. Not Mom, not Mother, not Ma, just Quinn Avery. Clear, cold, intentional. I brought it inside and placed it on the table. Carmen noticed it when she came in with her tool belt. "That looks heavy." "It is." "You want me to stay?" "No, this is mine." She nodded and continued toward the wiring panel without pressing. I opened the envelope carefully. The first page hit fast. Emergency petition for adult guardianship, filed by Brandon Avery Jr., co-petitioner Eric Avery. I read each line twice. Brandon claimed I was mentally unstable, unable to manage finances, unable to make decisions, at risk of harm. The petition requested full control of my assets, business, and medical decisions. Carmen glanced over. "You all right?" "Yes." "You want to handle this now?" "Yes." I took a deep breath, steady, slow, not shaken, just calculating. I closed the envelope, grabbed my coat, and called June. "I need a lawyer, today." June didn't waste time. "I know exactly who you need. Helena Brooks. She doesn't lose." "Where is she?" "Downtown Juneau. Her office is on Front Street. I'll meet you there." I drove into town through light snow. The roads were clear enough, but my hands stayed locked on the wheel. Not out of fear, out of control. If Brandon wanted a fight, I wasn't walking into it blind. Helena Brooks' office sat between a bank and a small cafe. Clean windows, no clutter, no fake warmth. She stood by the reception desk when I walked in. Short hair, sharp eyes, dark suit, no jewelry. She extended a hand. "I'm Helena. Let's get to work." We sat in a small conference room. She opened the envelope and scanned the petition fast, flipping pages with practiced precision. "When did this arrive?" "An hour ago." "Good. We move before they do." She grabbed a legal pad. "Tell me everything from the moment you left Ohio." I explained the Christmas dinner, the insult, the departure, the flight, the cabin, the construction, the bookings, the review, the growth. Helena didn't blink once. When I finished, she tapped the petition. "None of this holds, but we need proof that your life is stable and independent." "I have documents." "Good. Bring all of them tomorrow morning. financial records, contracts, construction agreements, booking logs, anything that shows you're running a functioning business. June entered the room quietly. I brought copies of all community permits. Helena took them. These help. A lot. She looked back at me. Do you understand what Brandon is trying to do? Yes. Spell it out for me. He wants control. Correct. And guardianship is the fastest way to take ownership of someone's assets without consent. I'm aware. Then you also know this isn't about concern, it's about power. I learned that the moment I walked out of my own house. Helena leaned forward. Here's what we do. We gather proof. We prepare testimony. We show the court you're competent, stable, and successful. We use facts, not emotion. Good. Emotion never helped me. She slid a binder across the table. Fill this with everything that proves your independence. Dates, amounts, signatures. I'll have it filled by tonight. I expect nothing less. June tapped my shoulder gently. You're not alone in this. I know, I answered, but I faced them myself. I drove back to the cabin with the binder beside me. I placed it on the table and opened my laptop. I printed receipts, contracts, permit approvals, supply orders, work invoices, booking confirmations, emails from guests, every piece of my new life. Carmen walked in to grab more tools. She paused when she saw the stack. That's a lot of proof. It needs to be. You want help organizing? No, I know the order. I figured. I worked for hours, hole-punching each sheet, labeling each tab, finances, operations, construction, professional correspondence, business plan, timeline, everything documented, everything clear. When I finished, the binder was full, heavy, structured, undeniable. Exactly the opposite of what my sons tried to claim. That night, I received the second envelope, this one from Brandon's attorney. Request, immediate freeze of Quinn Avery's accounts pending evaluation. I locked the screen. Enough. Morning came early. I drove back to Helena's office with the binder resting on the passenger seat like a weapon. She opened the door before I knocked. You brought everything? Yes. Let's see it. We sat again in the conference room. Helena flipped through the binder page by page. She didn't rush. She examined each document with exact attention. This is excellent, she concluded. You built clear structure. Judges respect structure. June arrived and placed signed community declarations on the table. 20 residents signed. They confirm Quinn is capable, functioning, and active in the community. Helena smiled slightly. Perfect. She turned back to me. The court set an emergency hearing for the end of the week. Brandon will attempt to argue instability. We counter with evidence. You speak only when necessary. Short answers. Direct. Controlled. I understand. No emotion, no anger. They expect you to react. Do not give them what they want. I won't. Helena prepared a small packet. Memorize these key points tonight. They outline your business operations. You need to communicate competence, not story. Competence is the only thing I have ever had. Then you'll win. June placed a warm hand on my arm. You're doing the right thing. Yes, I answered. For once. Before leaving, Helena stopped me at the door. One more thing. They thought you'd break. I don't break. Don't. That's why we'll beat them. I walked out of her office with the binder under my arm. The cold hit my face, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. The air felt clean, precise, not hostile. I wasn't frightened. I wasn't shaken. I was ready. As I reached the truck, my phone buzzed. A message from Brandon. Mom, stop this. You're making everything worse. I locked the phone without opening the rest. I placed the binder on the seat beside me. They won't rewrite who I am. And with that, the legal war officially began. The courthouse in Anchorage was colder than the parking lot outside. The air felt dry, sharp, and quiet in a way that told me the building didn't tolerate chaos. Helena walked 2 steps ahead of me, binder in hand, coat tucked tightly around her shoulders. June followed behind us but kept her distance, exactly as I asked. This was my fight, not hers. We checked in with security. The clerk pointed toward courtroom 3. Helena didn't slow. "Stay steady," she reminded me. "I am." Inside the courtroom, Brandon and Eric sat at the petitioner's table with their attorney. Brandon wore a dark suit he had probably bought for the performance. Eric kept tapping his knee, trying to look composed and failing. Neither of them looked at me when I entered. Helena leaned toward me. Eyes forward, no reactions. I don't react to noise. The judge entered. Everyone stood. When we sat again, Brandon's attorney began immediately. "Your Honor, we're requesting emergency guardianship for Ms. Quinn Avery due to clear signs of mental instability, reckless behavior, isolation, and financial mismanagement." Helena didn't move. She watched him the way a surgeon watches someone hold a knife incorrectly. The attorney continued, flipping through his notes. Ms. Avery left her home without warning, cut contact with her family, moved to Alaska alone, made large financial purchases without oversight, and is currently engaging in high-risk property development that exposes her to significant physical danger. Brandon finally looked at me, expecting fear. He found nothing. The judge turned to Helena. "Response?" Helena rose calmly. "Your Honor, none of those statements reflect incompetence. They reflect independence." A small ripple moved across the courtroom. Helena opened the binder with a clean snap. "My client relocated for personal safety and autonomy. She built a functioning business documented in these financial reports, construction contracts, and booking records. She is stable, organized, and supported by her community. The petitioners offer no medical evidence, only frustration that Ms. Avery no longer allows them control." The judge studied Helena. "Do you have witnesses?" "One." Helena nodded toward the back. June stepped forward and raised her hand for the oath. June stood straight. "Ms. Avery participates in community planning, maintains a safe property, works daily on construction, and manages finances better than most business owners I know." Brandon's attorney interrupted. "You're a friend. You're biased." June didn't blink. "I'm a neighbor, and I'm observant." Helena moved on. "Your Honor, I'd also like to present written declarations from 20 residents who have interacted with Ms. Avery weekly. They confirm her capability." She handed the judge the stack. The judge skimmed a few pages, then looked toward Brandon. "Do you have evidence supporting your claim of instability?" Brandon stood. "She ran away. She blocked us. She ignored our calls. She's acting impulsive." Helena cut in, calm and lethal. "Blocking harassment is not instability. It's a boundary." Brandon's jaw clenched. Eric stepped forward. "We're her family. We know her best." Helena countered. "Family familiarity isn't legal proof." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. Ms. Avery, do you want to speak?" Helena glanced at me. "Short answers," she reminded quietly. I stood. "I left because disrespect became normal. I rebuilt my life from structure, not emotion. Everything I do is documented. Everything I build is stable. I don't need guardians. I need distance." Silence filled the courtroom. Not tension, clarity. The judge turned to Brandon's table. "Do you have anything else? Medical reports? Professional evaluations? Financial inconsistencies?" Brandon's attorney shuffled papers. "No medical reports yet, Your Honor." "Yet means nothing in court," the judge responded. Brandon tried again. "She's acting different. She's not the mom we knew." I looked at him directly for the first time. I left the disrespect, not the family. The judge held up a hand. "Mr. Avery, difference is not incompetence. You're describing autonomy, not instability." Eric's voice rose. "She abandoned us." Helena stepped forward. "Adults are not required to stay somewhere they are mistreated." The judge tapped her pen against the file. "This petition lacks credible evidence. No medical basis. No financial mismanagement. No danger to herself or others. Ms. Avery appears competent, organized, and fully aware of her decisions." Brandon darted forward. "You don't understand." "Sit down," the judge ordered, firm. Brandon froze. Helena closed the binder calmly. She had known the outcome 10 minutes ago. The judge continued. "Petition for guardianship is hereby dismissed." Brandon's breath caught loud enough for the room to hear. Eric slumped back in his chair. Their attorney pressed his lips together, already defeated. The judge added one more line. And petitioners are warned, future filings without evidence may result in penalties. Helena turned toward me. We're done here. Yes, I replied. As we stepped out of the courtroom, Brandon reached for me. Mom, wait. I didn't pause. This is the last time you try to own me. He opened his mouth, but I kept walking. Helena kept pace beside me, binder under her arm like a completed mission. Outside, June exhaled hard. You stood solid in there. I had structure. And now you have freedom, she added. I looked toward the courthouse doors. Brandon watched from inside, face tight with disbelief. He had expected an easy win. He had expected the version of me he controlled. He didn't expect this version, the one who documented everything, the one who followed logic, the one he couldn't bend. Helena placed the binder in my hands. Keep this. It's your protection. I know. We walked toward the truck. Snow started falling again. Quiet, steady, predictable. I opened the door and placed the binder on the seat. It felt solid. Final. I booked a flight to Ohio 2 weeks after the court hearing. Not for reunion, not for forgiveness, only for closure. One trip, one conversation, one ending. I chose the earliest flight, packed one small suitcase, and kept the binder in my carry-on. I didn't need it anymore, but carrying it reminded me who I had become. The airport in Columbus felt the same as the day I left. Loud, rushed, distracted. I walked through it with calm steps. No hesitation, no hope, only purpose. Brandon waited near the exit doors with his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. Holly stood a few steps behind him. Her smile was thin, forced, and unsure. Eric wasn't there. Good. I didn't need a crowd. Brandon moved toward me. Thanks for coming. I'm here to finish something. He nodded quickly, trying to hide tension. Let's go home. It's not my home. He didn't argue. He just turned toward the parking lot, expecting me to follow. I did, but not for him, for the closure I came to take. The house looked the same from the outside. Same porch lights, same trimmed bushes, same wreath Holly put up every year. Nothing had changed except me. Brandon unlocked the door and stepped aside. I walked in first. The living room smelled faintly of cinnamon, like they tried to make it festive. Holly hovered behind me. Brandon stayed near the entrance, unsure whether to approach or keep distance. He finally opened his mouth. I know things got out of hand. No, things became clear. He lowered his eyes. We didn't expect you to leave. I didn't expect you to call me dead weight. Holly shifted. It was a stressful night. It was a normal night for you, I countered. And that was the problem. Brandon moved closer. We want to fix this. You want your version of me back. The quiet one, the available one, the one who carried everything and asked for nothing. No one responded. They knew I was right. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the small metal key, the spare house key I'd kept for decades. I placed it on the table. The sound was small but final. Holly's voice dropped. You don't need to do that. Yes, I do. Brandon stepped forward. Why now? I'm closing the door you left open too long. He winced. We weren't trying to take your life from you. Yes, you were, I answered. Guardianship isn't concern, it's control. He swallowed hard. We panicked. You tried to claim ownership over a life you didn't build. Silence filled the room, heavier than anything in Alaska. Brandon rubbed his forehead. Mom, I regret the way it happened. That's not an apology. He looked up, startled. I didn't soften. An apology acknowledges harm, not inconvenience, not discomfort, harm. Holly finally stepped closer. We were wrong. Yes. We thought you were falling apart. I wasn't falling. I was leaving. Another long silence dragged across the room. I let it sit. I wanted them to feel it, every second of it. I pointed at the key on the table. That's the last part of my old life. It stays here. Brandon exhaled sharply. So you're not coming back? No. We can visit you? Not right now. He blinked. Holly wiped her palms on her coat. I knew they weren't prepared for boundaries. They never had to face them before. Brandon tried again. We miss you. You miss access, not me. That's not fair. It's accurate. He stepped back, defeated. What do you want from us? Nothing. Holly pressed her lips together. We didn't realize how much you did. You didn't want to know. I took a slow breath, controlled, steady. I didn't come for forgiveness. I came for clarity. Brandon whispered, So this is it? This is the closure you forced. They both stood frozen. No argument left, no defense, only consequences. I turned toward the door. My steps were calm, deliberate. Brandon called after me, Mom, can we talk again? Later? When you understand respect. I didn't wait for a response. I opened the door, stepped onto the cold porch, and breathed air that didn't belong to them. I walked to the rental car and placed my hand on the door handle. Before opening it, I looked back once, not at the house, but at the key still sitting on the table through the window. No nostalgia, no longing, just confirmation that the chapter was closed. The engine started with a low rumble. I pulled out of the driveway slowly, not rushing, not running, leaving with intention, leaving with ownership. The drive to the airport was quiet. I didn't turn on music. I didn't check my phone. I kept my focus straight ahead. When I reached the terminal, I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked inside without looking back. When the plane took off, I lifted my eyes to the window. The city below looked small, distant, unimportant. I felt no pull toward it, no weight, only release. I whispered to myself, steady and clear, I'm releasing, not returning. And I meant it. A full year passed before I heard from any of them again. Not Brandon, not Holly, not Eric, only Ethan. His message was short. I want to understand. May I visit? No demands, no guilt, no entitlement, just a request. I allowed it. He arrived in late winter, the kind of cold that tested people who didn't grow up in it. His plane touched down on the small Douglas Island airstrip, and I watched from the edge of the parking lot as he stepped off the stairs. He carried only one bag. No rush, no performance. When he spotted me, he gave a nod. Quiet, respectful, unsure. Thank you for letting me come. You asked. That was new. I'm trying. I motioned toward the truck. Get in. We'll talk on the way. He climbed in. His hands stayed still in his lap. No tapping, no fidgeting, just someone finally learning to think before reacting. I've seen what you built online, he started. The retreat looks strong. It is. You did all that after leaving? I did it because I left. He absorbed the words without flinching. Progress. As we drove through the tree line, he glanced at the snow-laced branches and the small cabins scattered off the main road. You live different here. Yes. Were we really that blind? Yes. He nodded slowly. I want to fix my part in that. You start by acknowledging it. I am. The retreat came into view as we rounded the last bend. 3 cabins completed, a main lodge, and the trail markers Carmen installed last fall. Smoke drifted from the chimneys. The grounds were clean, organized, functional. Ethan stepped out of the truck and scanned everything. This is more than a project. It's a life. You built all this without help? I built it with the right help. June walked from the lodge with 2 mugs in her hands. You must be Ethan. He greeted her with a small, respectful nod. June looked at me. Crew's finishing the new sign out front. I'll check it later. Ethan followed me toward the porch. Can you show me the inside? Yes. Inside the main lodge, he paused, stunned at the clean layout, polished wood, supply shelves, heating system, and the planning board mounted on the wall. You run this like a company, he observed. It is a company. You never told us you could do this. You never asked what I was capable of. He walked to the board filled with schedules, bookings, maintenance notes, and supply orders. This looks steady. It's steady because I run it without interference. He took a deep breath. I didn't defend you enough growing up. I thought staying quiet meant staying neutral. Silence helps the loudest person, usually the wrong one. I know that now. I didn't soften, not even for him. Growth didn't erase history. It only made room for clarity. Carmen entered through the back door, wiping her gloves on her coat. You must be the younger son. Ethan, he introduced himself. Your mother built something real here, she told him. I can see that. Most people underestimate her. Bad habit. Ethan lowered his eyes. We did that. All of us. Carmen didn't comfort him. Then change it. He nodded once. I'm here for that. After lunch, I walked him through the cabins. He followed quietly, not distracting himself with apologies or excuses. When we reached the end of the trail, he stopped. You look different, he observed. I stopped shrinking. I want to get to that point. You will when you stop letting other people write your life for you. He looked straight at me. Teach me. His voice wasn't desperate. It wasn't demanding. It was honest. The first real honesty I'd heard from anyone in that family. What do you want to learn? How you stood up for yourself. How you walked out and didn't break. I didn't walk out. I walked toward something. We returned to the lodge as the afternoon light faded. Holly waited at the door. I recognized the way she held herself, nervous, careful, stripped of the edge she used to carry. She stepped forward. May I come in? You already are. She exhaled shakily. I came to apologize. For what? For disrespect. For standing with the wrong people. For staying silent when I should have spoken. And what changed? You built a life without us. A good one. And I'm finally seeing who you really are, not who Brandon told us you were. I studied her face. No theatrics, no polished performance, just truth worn thin by consequences. You're late, I answered. I know, but I'm here now. Ethan stepped beside her, steadying her without touching. We want to understand, not judge, he added. I motioned toward the long table near the window. Sit. They sat across from me, hands folded, eyes steady. Holly leaned forward slightly. You didn't lose your mind. You found it. That's what independence does. No one ever taught me that, she admitted. That's why you needed this distance. Ethan looked around the lodge again. This place is healing. It's built for that. Even for people like us. Even for people who learn. He lowered his gaze. Thank you for letting us come. This isn't reconciliation, I clarified. This is the beginning of understanding. We'll take that, Holly whispered. We sat quietly for a moment, the kind of silence that wasn't heavy, just honest. I finally stood. Come back tomorrow. I'll show you the land allocation and planning board. You'll teach us? Ethan asked. If you stay consistent. We will. I believed him, not because he promised, but because he showed up differently. As they stepped outside, the sky opened with a faint green arc across the horizon, subtle, steady, natural. Ethan paused. Is that normal here? It's a reminder, I answered. Of what? That growth takes time. He nodded with quiet understanding. Holly linked her hands together, not out of fear, out of resolve. We'll see you in the morning. Yes, I replied. They walked toward the guest cabin, not as intruders, not as owners, as students. And for the first time, that was enough. The expansion began the first week of spring. Snow still covered the edges of the property, but the main grounds had cleared enough for construction. Carmen arrived with a larger crew than usual. Trucks lined the road, tools stacked neatly along the work area, and new supply pallets waited under tarps. Carmen walked up the porch steps. 2 new cabins, a trail system, and signage. We move fast. I'm ready. You kept up before. You'll keep up now. Ethan stepped out of cabin 2 with a clipboard. He had been shadowing Carmen for 2 weeks, observing, not controlling. "We finished measuring the perimeter for cabin 4, he reported. "Good," I responded. "Show me the markers." He led us to the clearing. Wooden stakes formed a square, each with neon tape tied tight around the top. The ground was level. Carmen crouched to check spacing. "This is clean work," she told him. "I followed your measurements." "You followed them correctly," she acknowledged. I checked the elevation and the angle of the clearing. "This location holds drainage better." Carmen nodded. "That's why we picked it. Strong ground, no flooding." June walked toward us carrying 3 thermoses. "Workers are setting up the trail equipment. They want your approval before they start cutting." "I'll go there next," I answered. She handed me a thermos. "You're running this place like a director." "I'm running it like someone who owns it." We walked back to the lodge. Inside, Holly organized guest supplies stacked neatly in labeled bins. She had offered to help 3 days after arriving and had followed instructions without stepping outside her lane. She looked up. "Inventory is updated. I matched the list with the bookings." "Accuracy matters," I noted. "I'm learning that from watching you." The lodge felt different now. Not softer, not warmer, just more efficient. The planning board expanded to 2 full panels. Booking charts filled one wall. Maintenance logs hung beside them. Every number was updated daily. The retreat wasn't just functioning, it was thriving. Carmen motioned for me to join her outside. "Trail layout first, then we start foundation cuts." "I'll walk it now." The workers had mapped the trail markers through the forest. Colored flags hung from branches, guiding a clear path. I moved through the route step by step, checking spacing, slope, and safety. Ethan followed silently, taking notes and asking questions only when necessary. "Keep the incline under 10% here," I instructed. He measured. 9.2. Safe. "Good." Carmen joined us midway. "We'll reinforce this bend with gravel, prevent sliding." "Approved." We continued until we reached the final marker at the overlook. The view opened into a clean stretch of water and distant hills. No houses, no roads, just open land. But I didn't linger. I focused on the trail width and the drop-off clearance. "This place will hold guests well," Carmen commented. "It holds purpose," I answered. We headed back toward the lodge. Workers were mixing concrete for the cabin pillars. The sound was steady, rhythmic, controlled. I checked the measurements again. Carmen signaled to one worker, 3 inches deeper. He adjusted immediately. June approached with her clipboard. "The tourism board emailed again. They want you to speak at their fall conference." "I'll review it later." "They want a case study presentation." "I know," Carmen overheard. "You should do it. People need to see what you built." "I built stability, nothing more." "That's exactly what they want to hear." Inside the lodge, Holly placed towels onto storage shelves. "Guests keep leaving notes," she mentioned. "They talk about how calm this place feels." "They feel the structure," I replied. "They feel your work." Ethan stepped beside her. "You built freedom here." "I built systems. Freedom came after." We moved back outside to inspect the foundation forms. Workers poured concrete into the frames. Carmen monitored the consistency. "Tomorrow, we start framing." "Keep the timeline tight," I instructed. "We will." Booking alerts chimed on my phone. Another dozen reservations, then another. The retreat was booked 6 months out. I closed the calendar. "No more bookings until the new cabins are complete." June nodded. "I'll update the site." Ethan looked at the new structure rising from the ground. "I didn't know work could feel like this." "Work feels right when it's yours," I told him. "I want a life like this." "Then build it." Carmen returned with updated plans. "Once these cabins are done, you'll have capacity for 50% more guests." "Then we expand staffing next." "I'll help train them," Ethan offered. "Only if you stay consistent." "I will." Holly stepped closer. "I want to learn the business side, if you allow it." Shadow June. "She'll teach you the basics." June smiled slightly. "We start tomorrow." "I'll be here," Holly affirmed. Afternoon light stretched across the property. Workers finished pouring concrete. Carmen checked each section twice. I reviewed everything again afterward. Nothing moved forward without confirmation. That was the rule. That kept the retreat stable. Inside the lodge, I updated the planning board, shifting tasks, adding deadlines, marking completed items. June stood beside me. This place is becoming a full operation. It already is. You're leading a team now. I'm leading a life. When the workers packed up, Carmen approached me. Expansion is on schedule. Morale is high. Demand is up. Good. You're doing something rare. I'm doing what should have been done years ago. Holly and Ethan joined us at the porch. They didn't intrude. They waited. Ethan spoke first. We want to stay through the expansion, if you allow it. Stay as long as you're useful. We will be. I looked at the cabins rising in the distance, the trail markers forming a clean line through the forest, the lodge glowing from the inside with organized purpose. Nothing here was accidental. Nothing here was luck. Everything was structure, work, and clarity. June stepped beside me. You didn't build cabins. You built freedom. I built both, I replied. Tomorrow the framing would rise. Next month the expansion would open. And soon after, the retreat would no longer be a small project. It would be an established haven, a functioning, respected, independent system, built on my terms. The last cabin opened in early fall. Guests filled every room, every weekend booked, every review consistent. Quiet, stable, restorative. I stepped out of the lodge that evening to check the grounds one final time before closing the books for the night. The air was cold but calm, the kind of cold that didn't warn, it simply existed. Predictable, manageable. Carmen finished locking the tool shed. Everything's secure. Crew's heading out. Good. Tomorrow we start the maintenance cycle. We're set for it. Ethan walked from the trail entrance with the day's report in his hand. No issues on the west path. Guests used it safely. Update the board before you leave. I will. Holly stepped onto the porch carrying a stack of completed checklists. All guest supplies restocked, laundry rotation finished. Place the forms in the binder. On it. They moved with purpose. Steady, efficient, comfortable inside structure. Watching them no longer felt strange. They weren't the people who once stood behind Brandon. They had grown into their own decisions, and they did it without performance. June approached with the mail. Conference organizers emailed again. They want confirmation for your keynote next month. I'll accept. I thought you might. She handed me 2 envelopes. One held travel documents. The other held something heavier, a plaque from the Regional Travel Board recognizing Avery Ridge Retreat as a model for small-scale independent development. I read the inscription once, then placed it aside. Awards didn't matter. Stability did. Before you go inside, June added, look up. I lifted my eyes. A faint green arc stretched across the edges of the sky. Not bright, not loud, just present. It grew slowly, expanding across the horizon with steady movement. Ethan stepped out of the lodge behind me. You see it? Yes. It's clearer tonight. It is. We watched for a moment, silent, not because the view demanded it, but because presence didn't need commentary. I stepped back into the lodge. Inside, the planning board was clean, updated, color-coded. The booking chart showed 6 months filled, every marker in place, every log precise. This was the kind of order I wanted my whole life. Order without sacrifice, work without disrespect. Ethan walked in after finishing his updates. Everything's recorded. Good. He hesitated. I know this isn't the end, but thank you for giving us a place to learn. You earned the space through your behavior. We'll keep earning it. Holly joined him. We won't repeat who we used to be. That's your work, I reminded her. And we're doing it. They left the lodge quietly. No demands for reassurance. No searching for approval. Just people learning their way forward. The retreat lights turned on automatically as the sky darkened. I poured myself tea and opened my journal. It wasn't a diary. It was documentation, Dates, decisions, outcomes. I flipped through the earlier pages: storm preparation, construction notes, legal strategies, the first bookings, expansion plans. Pages filled with structure. Proof of a life built intentionally. I turned to a fresh page. Not for planning this time, but for acknowledgement. My hand moved slowly, but my mind stayed clear. I wasn't dead weight. I was the spine. Once I stopped carrying them, I finally rose. I closed the journal. The words weren't emotional. They were factual. They matched the year I lived. They matched the woman I became. I stepped out onto the porch again. The sky had deepened into full color. The glow reflected across the snow-dusted clearing, lighting the cabins in a quiet gradient. Holly and Ethan stood near their guest cabin, watching with calm expressions. Not awe, not shock, just understanding. Carmen waved once from her truck before driving off. June locked the lodge door behind me. "You ready for the next phase?" she asked. "Yes." "Conference, expansion, new programs?" "All of it," she nodded. "You built something that doesn't rely on anyone's approval." That was the point. I looked across the property. Cabins, trails, signage, the lodge humming with quiet operations. Every part of it existed because I chose it. Not because someone needed me to sacrifice. Not because someone demanded my strength then dismissed it. This was mine. Entirely mine. June pulled her coat tighter. "You know, most people don't get a second life. I built one, and you built it clean. Nothing messy survives long." She gave a small, firm nod and headed toward her cabin. I stayed on the porch alone, not lonely, just present. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message preview flashed on the screen. "Mom, can we talk?" Brandon. I locked the phone without opening the message. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. I didn't need closure from him anymore. I had already taken it. I stepped forward toward the edge of the porch. The air was crisp. The retreat lights looked steady. The sky continued its slow movement overhead. Everything around me felt aligned. Not dramatic, not sentimental, just correct. The conference invitation rested on the table inside. I would accept it, present my work, and return home to continue what I built. Not for recognition, not for redemption, for direction. I took one more look across the clearing, then closed the porch gate behind me. The sound was soft but solid, the kind of sound that marked the end of one chapter and the start of another, without needing to announce it. This wasn't a victory. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was identity. Earned. Rebuilt. Owned. I stepped back inside the lodge, turned off the lanterns, closed the final logbook entry for the night, and walked toward the door with calm certainty. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you've ever rebuilt your life, set a boundary, or found your strength after being overlooked, then you know what this journey meant. And maybe, in your own way, you're living a rise of your own. And if you'd like to hear more stories of quiet strength, justice, and second chances, make sure to subscribe to Grandma Life Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps them reach someone who might need them today. Thank you for your time, your heart, and your company. I'll see you in the next video. Take good care of yourself.